I'm the Marketing and Special Events Director at the library in Kent. On behalf of the House of Books and the Kent Memorial Library, I'm so excited to welcome you to this special book talk, virtual signing, and conversation between Amy Poeppel and Elinor Lipman. I have read books by both authors and have to say, not only are their books enjoyable, but they're also quite humorous. Helping us tonight is our technology point person, Amanda Myers. We will now meet the General Manager of House of Books, Ben Ryback. Ben?
Hi, thank you so much, Lucy. Good evening, everybody. And thank you very much for being here. I just want to quickly just say thank you, a sincere thanks to our good friends and partners, our dear friends and partners at the Kent Memorial Library, to sort of help us make up our little literary family in downtown Kent. We couldn't do what we do without their support and friendship, so thank you so very much. I just want to say quickly, House of Books is an independent bookstore in Kent, Connecticut. We have been open for more than 40 years, and we feature an eclectic selection of literary fiction, general interest nonfiction, kids' books, gift items, and more. We have our full inventory online at houseofbooksct.com. And we have lots more events coming up. On Saturday, we have an event in partnership again with Kent Memorial Library featuring Roxana Robinson and Honor Moore, and lots more coming up from House of Books too. So please take a look at our website and sign up for our newsletter to hear about everything that we have going on. A little bit of housekeeping quickly. Please make sure that your videos remain hidden and your mics remain muted for the duration of the event this evening. If at any point you're experiencing technical difficulties, please just type it in the chat and Amanda will connect with you to troubleshoot. And finally, we will save time at the end for a Q&A. So if you have a question, please just type it over there in the chat on the right-hand side. I always point as though you can see where I'm pointing, but it's right there on the right-hand side. And we will get to as many questions as we can. So not only do we have Amy Poeppel here this evening, we also are lucky enough to have in conversation with her Elinor Lipman. She's the author of 14 books of fiction and nonfiction, including Then She Found Me, The Inn at Lake Divine, Isabel's Bed, I Can't Complain, The View from Penthouse B, On Turpentine Lane, and most recently, Good Riddance. She was the 2011-2012 Elizabeth Drew Professor of Creative Writing at Smith College, and she lives in Pawling, New York. So she's pretty local to us as well. So thank you so much, Elinor, for being here with us tonight. As for Amy Poeppel grew up in Dallas, Texas. She graduated from Wellesley College and worked as an actress in the Boston area, appearing in corporate industrial videos for Polaroid, a commercial for Brooks Pharmacy, and a truly terrible episode of America's Most Wanted. All of those sounded absolutely wonderful too, I have to say. I would love to see any of those. While in Boston, she also got her MA in teaching from Simmons College. I have to say that when I first started as general manager at House of Books in April, Amy was actually the first Ken author that I met, or Litchfield County author that I met. And the first person who locals and customers and people were telling me, oh, you got to meet Amy. You've got to read her. You've got to read Musical Chairs. And boy, were they right. And boy, am I glad that I did. Of course, the staff here already knew all about Amy and her work and had already read Musical Chairs. They were ahead of me. And one of our booksellers, Mary at the time, said it very well. She said to me, and we posted online, the characters in Musical Chairs become like old friends and their stories cleverly weave together with joy, resentment, secrets, and above all, humor. It's a welcome comfort in these most unusual times. So you can buy a signed copy of Musical Chairs after the event, houseofbooksct.com/musicalchairs. There's so much else to say about the book and especially its relationship to Kent, but nothing sets it up better actually than the book's trailer, which is one of the funniest ones I've seen. So it'll set the stage perfectly for the evening. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy.
funny. Somebody just wrote that they think that my book is really autobiographical. That's ridiculous.
But isn't it a book about New Yorkers who have a house in Connecticut?
And all the adult kids move back home?
What?
No, yes, but they're twins. She has a daughter. I don't have a daughter.
Yeah, but isn't the house they're in like completely falling apart? I thought they were all musicians. Don't they bring all their pets? Doesn't the mom drink a lot of wine?
No, this is fiction. I'm a novelist.
Thrilled to be doing this. And when Amy, I think it was an email where you asked me if I would do this, and I think I answered in about 5 seconds, would you say? I did. So I have questions, and as I said to Amy, many of them are questions, compliments disguised as questions, because I loved this book. Oh. And I will, and then eventually we'll take questions, so please write those in the chat section. And Amy and I met in Kent. And actually, there's a Simmons connection. I didn't know that till a day or two ago. I graduated from Simmons, and you were there many years after, I suspect, and graduate school. Is that right?
Yes, I got my master's in teaching there about, I guess, in 1990.
Okay. Well, I've already said we met in Kent at House of Books. You very generously came to a signing I did there 2 books ago on Turpentine Lane.
On Turpentine Lane, and I have my signed copy from Elinor, where you said, "Thrilled to meet you. May our paths cross again soon." And they did. Our paths have crossed.
They did. So what I'm going to do, I have a notebook with many pages, and I have the book, and I've got my glasses. So I'm going to start with questions. And what I'm trying to do is I've read the book, so didn't want it to end. I was so happy when I got to the end, and then it said coda. And when does that happen? When you're just, not relieved that you finished a book? It was like, oh no, it's over. And then, oh, hooray, a coda. So I will try to ask questions that aren't reveals for people who the reading is still ahead. So anyway, let me put my glasses on. So one of my first questions is that the music. I mean, you are a pro. I know from the acknowledgements you thanked your husband and your son for their knowledge of classical music, but it goes beyond that. It goes into, for example, I wrote this sentence down where it just said the cellist, it said, talking about the pianist, waiting for him to inhale on the 3rd beat with a nod of his head to mark the beginning. And I said to myself, now, how do you know that? It was more than just you listened to some nice music.
So while I stall and think of an answer to that question, I just want to thank you, Elinor, so much for being here tonight. And I want to thank Lucy at the library and Ben at the bookstore and Amanda for being our tech guru. I'm just so happy to be doing this. I really am not kidding that I have no musical background at all. I cannot read music. I don't play an instrument. I got as far as the recorder. I learned how to play hot cross buns when I was about 6. But having my youngest start really young, I mean, he was maybe 6 or 7 when he really sort of became one of those kids where you just knew this wasn't going to be just a hobby. He got really obsessively interested in classical music at a weirdly young age. So I do think that taking him to all of those recitals and all of those lessons and hearing that in the house all the time. And then later he went to Walnut Hill, which is really close to where Wellesley College is. It's an arts boarding school. And seeing him work with ensembles and seeing that I don't know, there was something about that moment when the music starts, when they're all three. It seems so important to me, those moments where they're looking at each other and glancing and getting ready to start. And that just always stuck with me. And I think that was partly why, when I was thinking of where to set these best friends, that I just had it in my head that I wanted it to be something where the chemistry of the group mattered. So I wanted them to have something holding them together more than just their friendship or their history. I wanted it to be something work related, but just something where the chemistry and the communication, whether with words or otherwise, is somehow really important. So that was how I ended up in this music world, which involved a lot of research because I did not know what I was doing when I started.
So how did you, were there moments where you said, will my character be the cellist? Will she be the violinist? Will she be the pianist? How did you decide? Did you know right from the get-go?
I didn't. This book went through, as you, I'm sure, are really familiar, it went through a lot of rewrites. This was a quartet originally before I suddenly realized, of course, a trio is so much more interesting than a quartet. Just narratively, I think there's something about triangles of characters that can be so interesting. So I killed off one member, the violist, and ended up with just the three. I think I wanted, Will is really my son, like, 30 years from now. He's very much character-wise, sort of things that I appreciate and respect in my youngest kid. And my youngest kid plays the piano. So that just sort of fit well for me. And there's something about, I don't know, something about Will caring about his fingernails and caring about just being very sort of exacting. It just seemed to fit well. And for my sort of bratty star, I just felt that should be the violinist. So I think it was almost by default that Bridget ended up playing cello. The other two were very clear to me. But when I told Luke, I think I need this to be a trio instead of a quartet, he was like, I think it should be a piano trio. So he would give me a list of music to listen to, and I would listen and sort of try to figure out the dynamic of the group. And I just thought that worked for me, for my narrative purposes. A trio worked really, really well.
And I would hasten to add that the violist that you killed off is not killed off in the book, in case anyone is looking for that, murder aspect of it. Okay, so
yeah, there's no murder. No murder. It
yeah.
was just in the drafting process that he got.
But it wasn't just the music, because I was impressed all the way through about everything, about what I guess is best called authenticity. Just felt, whether you're talking about like a blackout in the house, see, that's not a reveal, we all have blackouts, power outages, but there was something about just everything, whether it was, the scruffy tennis court, the condition of the house. And I just, clearly you have experience. We saw in the trailer that you have a house and it's some overgrown and some cupboard door falling off. But so this is just a compliment. So I'm going to ask you, because everyone always wants to know, people always ask, they want to know about the writing process. So it can be, will I wake up at 6 a.m, or it can be, I write chapter by chapter, I revise and revise before I go on, or I have a mess and then I go back. Yeah, just tell us.
Okay, and I'm dying for you to answer this question too.
Okay.
I'm someone who longs to be a structured person with a start time and an end time, but I'm really more of a binge writer. I get excited about an idea, and that's kind of what I do during that period. I if I'm in New York, I forget to walk the dog and he piddles on the carpet. I just get really, I don't get out of my pajamas sometimes. So it's not attractive, but it seems to work for me that I just get very obsessive and I just work ridiculous hours when I'm sort of excited about an idea and a project. And I feel like it would be so much more grown up if I would just sort of set an alarm and work from this to this and then take a break and take a walk and have a balanced life. And I don't know how people do it. My brain does not seem to work that way. Are you organized?
I am, but I'll get to that. But when you talk about like binge with an idea, you don't mean binge the whole book, you're in your pajamas for 2 years. You mean like maybe the dad, something is going to happen socially. See how vague I'm being, with the 90-year-old father, something about his love life, maybe. That's what you mean. You mean sort of a chapter.
Sort of a thread. Like, I get excited about one piece of the book and I don't want to forget, like, if that happens to her, then what's all the trickle down that's going to come after that? So it might be for a chunk of the book, and it might be for a few weeks at a time, that I kind of get just in this mode of being almost scared to stop, because I know right now, like, I know what's going to happen. And so I'm terrified to sort of put my laptop away, because even if the writing's atrocious, I just sort of, if I get a sense of the arc of like what I want to have happen, I just want to get it all down and then fix it in a more, yes. And that part for me happens in a calmer, more.
And so the fixing is done when all of those, what you might call messy chapters, you go to the end. Is that right?
I sort of will do a quarter of the book and then redo that and then move forward and then go back again. And then I'll change something halfway through that means that I have to go back and throw out 3 chapters at the beginning. I feel like there's got to be a more efficient way to do this. But I feel like I have to write the wrong way often before I can figure out what the right way is. Like if I, the quartet, I mean, I wrote a good chunk of this book with 4 musicians in it before I suddenly realized it wasn't working. The chemistry in the group wasn't right. It needed to sort of be more heightened and something was off. And then and then I had to go back and I had to rewrite huge amounts of it. But I don't know. I'm happy in those moments. I might be in my pajamas and I might look like, but my husband will get up and go to work and he'll come back and I'm in the exact same position and he'll say, that is not good for your back, because I'm just like hunched over and working. But I'm so happy in those moments and I'm so excited that I just sort of like to sort of get to the end of one of those sort of things where I'm like, all of that is that's important and needs to get down, even if it's wrong or right. Sometimes it's right. Not often,
Yeah.
sometimes. But you're more structured.
What I do is I try to start fairly early, like 8 in the morning, and I aim for 500 words. And sometimes if that happens too quickly, because let's say it's a lot of dialogue and dialogue comes the easiest for me, then I'll say, okay, try for 750. And then if I get to like 790, I think, oh, go for it and do it, 1,000. That doesn't happen very often. But I polish. At the end of every chapter, I don't go forward. I revise it, like 20 times, because I send it to 2 dear friends. One is my former editor, Stacy Schiff, who, Cleopatra and with the witches, and she started off as an editor when she was 24. And Mamie Medwed, a very dear friend. So I don't want to waste their time. So I send them chapter by chapter, but it's as polished as I can do it.
Right.
Right.
But then do you ever have to go back and scrap those?
Oh, same thing, because there will be inconsistencies or the same thing. I cut out, when I finished the last book that I finished in May, I cut out a whole chapter that I was very fond of, because I realized at the time, because I don't outline, that I thought that there were little, just little crumbs in that one that I was going to, pick up later, but I didn't. Right. But anyway, back to you in the book. Okay, so the writing process.
It's those little crumbs that I'm so afraid of losing track of them. It's those little pieces.
Yeah. Do you make notes? Do you have, or is it just post-it notes on your laptop? Yeah.
Yes, I do. I stick them all over, and I usually have like a legal pad where I'm sort of like, don't forget, if you change this, you've got to go back and change all of that, But I think I'm still finding my process. I'm so new to this, since I didn't publish my first book till I was 50. I'm still sort of figuring out what this should look like, or what it does look like. I'm still new. So.
But this is your 3rd wonderful book. And we should mention, so we had Small Admissions, and then Limelight, which was, I will not be talking about that as much, but talking about Oh, excellent, excellent. But also that you are so great at obnoxiousness. And wait, how does that come across? That but it's done so like at a distance so that the audience, the reader appreciates, because we too think that character is obnoxious. And the very first thing I came across was the wonderful main character, Bridget. And I'll talk more about Bridget, but she is expecting, now she's about 50, Bridget? So 50,
or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So she has a new boyfriend and she thinks this is going to, go places. And it's not too much of a reveal because it's quite near the beginning of the book. But his breakup note to her, email,
Yes.
it's just a classic. It's so self-consciously and yeah, anyway, so you do that so beautifully. And again, hope this isn't a reveal, but just speaking in generalities. For example, there's a child in the book, not, a kind of visiting child.
Yeah.
And the parents are what I call, sort of like perfect public parents, that they want to say the right thing. They want to do the right thing. I wrote down, wait, I have to find out. I have different quotes on different pages here. Let's see, where it is. Well, let's see. Wait, okay. Oh, yes. The little boy at some point has kicked his father, and the mother who is trying to do everything right says, "Daddies aren't for biting, daddies aren't for hitting, darling."
Yeah.
And I thought that was just the perfect thing. And you do that with diet and the people who come and visit you and they're allergic to everything and they're, no offense to anyone, gluten-free, and all that. Okay, love it. And I didn't reveal anything, did I? No.
Very demanding. Yeah. No, there's
Very demanding guests.
Yeah.
And guests are quite the theme here.
Yeah.
Because there are guests who are always welcome and practically have, a room, not over the garage, what's it called, that where Will stays?
The loft. It's sort of the upstairs of the house.
Yeah, she's very generous. Now, okay, here's a real question and not just a compliment. Okay, and that is, in the acknowledgments, you say you thank people, in-laws, friends, who read it for you. So whose advice do you take? How do you know? There must be, over the years, like, no, I don't listen to them, but they're expecting it anyway, kind of.
Well, so my family, they're great. They just love everything I do. So I love,
that's good.
It just boosts my ego, but it's not necessarily what one needs, which is to be sort of torn apart. So I do have an editor who I work with, Anika Streitfeld. She's just my coach and partner, and she will tell me what I need to hear. I mean, and by what I need to hear, it's not "you're our sister and we love you," which is what my sisters do, which I really appreciate. She'll say, "This isn't working. Like, none of this is working. I'm not, I don't buy this character. Or this isn't, she'll just tell me where things are flowing and where they aren't." So I really appreciate it. And I just trust her. I trust her narrative sense and her sense of humor, and just, yeah. So she's the
How
person
did you
I listen to.
How did you find her?
She was introduced to me by my agent, actually. And she is, yeah, she's terrific. She will literally, I try to keep her eyes fresh. So I try not to send her too much too soon, but I'll send her the first few chapters, and then we'll talk, we'll talk sort of through what's working and what isn't working. And, how can we sort of make things faster, funnier, better, and just so I'll write the beginning and it might have 4 characters in it, but then she'll want to sort of talk about, well, how are we fleshing out this? Like, what else is going to be working its way into this? So in the case of this book, it is a big cast of characters. And because one of your books turned into a play and my second book is about theater, and we both seem to like the dialogue part of writing better than any other part, I think.
Yes, yeah, I would say that too. Yes.
yeah, so this book was fun to write, but I keep thinking it would be nice to have a cast of characters in the front of the book to actually have, like the way a play does, just actually have a cast of characters. I think that would be, how in like old Russian novels, you have like the whole family tree,
Yes.
I sort of
It's
feel
funny
like,
though, years and years ago, Meg Wolitzer wrote an essay in the New York Times Book Review, and for some reason, what she said, two things that make her say "uh-oh" and dread when she opens a novel. One of them is the cast of characters. The other one is a map. Yeah, I don't do that yet. Okay, so let me see. Okay. No, this might. Anika might have solved this for you. So, maybe this is now redundant to ask about, but everything in musical chairs, and this is now another compliment, I'll have to turn it into a question. It seems to belong, I know what, hit it as a compliment, that I am an impatient reader. And for example, a former editor of mine named Jane Roseman, she once said about, there was a book she really liked and she gave it to her son who was 11 or 12 at the time. And he said, no, he didn't like it. And she said, why not? And he said, too much wind in the trees. And, another thing I loved about this book is everything seemed to belong there. So you do describe, but it is to help the reader see, not to wax poetic, or as Jane Roseman used to say, poetique. She used to call that as a disparaging adjective. That I really felt, so is that Anika, but I really felt that it's economical, yet we know what the room looks like, we know what she's cooking, we know what she's wearing. And so just talk a little bit about that kind of editing.
Well, so I do love dialogue. I don't love dialogue tags, and I just see it as if it's a play in my head. So I want you just to see what they're wearing. I don't want to have to tell you. But then Anika will read it and she'll say, but what's happening? I hear all this dialogue and it's quick and it's fun banter, but I need to kind of see more. So for me, that's the harder part. I have to go back in and add that in. I think because I'm adding it in, I'm only adding in what I feel like you really need to know, because it informs you somehow either about a character or about, like I have Bridget baking at one point, and she's not really much of a baker, but I needed her to be doing something that was later going to serve a purpose in, like, a little bit later in the scene.
To address that very thing. Because I liked that, because she makes peach muffins, and where the reader might say, oh, come on, that's a coincidence. But she herself, Bridget, says she can't believe that she had the good luck to have made muffins on this day where all these people were coming by. But go on.
Yes, exactly. So I think, like I do these, there's a couple scenes in this book, they're like fun, big, like dinner party scenes. And the way I write them first is I literally just write them like a dialogue, and I just have characters entering in my head, stage left, stage right. And of course that doesn't work in prose. So then I have to go back in and I have to sort of add, like, what would really help inform you and have you see the humor, and have you, like the dogs, for example, eating the cheese off the plate. I don't, for any of the audience who are dog lovers, but you can't put a cheese plate on a coffee table if you have a Newfoundland in the house. Like, that just doesn't work. So I go back and I add things in as I need to, and I do try to be spare with all of that, because frankly, I like using my imagination when I'm reading. I don't do heavy descriptions of people either. I sort of like to feel that as you're casting that in your head, that you can sort of cast it the way you see fit. So I don't do a lot of that, because I sort of do like to leave what I can leave to the reader without asking the reader to do too much. I mean, there is such a thing as asking the reader to do too much.
When you talked about just the dialogue, when Stacy Schiff was my editor and she was editing, she wasn't, she was just reading chapters of Isabel's Bed, which was my third novel.
I remember
And
that
she
novel.
wrote in the margin, "Could someone here please pass the potatoes?" And I always remember that because my characters would just talk. And, now I say like, oh yeah, right. Maybe they'll take a nibble out of the radish or something, take a
Yes.
sip of the wine.
Yeah.
But also, I think, oh yeah, I left mine in the kitchen. I might have to run and get it. Another thing that just addresses exactly what you said about the dialogue. Oh, viewing. I found that with two of my male characters in two different books. One was The Pursuit of Alice Thrift, and the other one was in Good Riddance, where I go out of my way to describe, because it takes effort, just like you, it's not your favorite thing to do. But I remember he was a male nurse in The Pursuit of Alice Thrift, and I had talked about his skin was acne scarred, but he has a little koala bear on his stethoscope, so, he's a nice guy. But he invariably was described as handsome and hunky. And similarly in Good Riddance, the guy across the street, across the hall who still has braces, it seemed that readers, if it's a sympathetic and nice male character, they make him handsome.
Yes. And
yeah,
I think
let them do it.
Yeah, I think it's great for the reader to get to do that. I mean, it's hard sometimes because I'm picturing the character also, and I do feel that there's, I have to do some of that. So like with my pop star in Limelight, I did sort of want to explain what tattoos he had and what misspellings there were in those tattoos and things like that, because I feel like that's not just description, it's also sort of telling you the kind of person that he is.
And you should have gotten like a Pulitzer for, again, an obnoxious character, but all for the good. Now I notice it might be, it's just too early. We have a lot of questions. Oh God, longest question ever. Okay. To order the book. Okay, we didn't hear it till, okay.
Oh, so just to address the sound thing, if anybody wants to watch the video, just go to YouTube. In the search window, you can type my name and type the title Musical Chairs, and the video will come up. And it's just a funny video that I did with my kids, and it will give you a little bit of a glimpse of where I and the main character might have just a few similarities. So
we have placed the link in the chat as well, but
cool.
I think we figured out the kink in the system. If we want to share it again,
it's up to you, Elinor. Do you want to?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you mean about the link, or should I was just going to read the questions.
Yes. No. Go. Yeah. I would just say that anyone who wants to watch it, the link is there, and just copy and paste it and watch it later.
Okay. So anyway, this is Mary from House of Books, the previously mentioned Mary.
Hi, Mary.
She said, I read your book at the height of the pandemic in Connecticut, and it transported me to normal times and the beauty of Connecticut's summers, but most of all, the humor, which made me laugh out loud. You explained how you got the inspiration from musical chairs, but where did the inspiration come from with your other novels? Is it something you see or read, or just a line that sticks in your mind?
So for Limelight, I just remember sort of getting this idea. I just remember walking around Broadway in New York and seeing that all these big Broadway musicals had these big stars in them. And just wondering, I just remember thinking to myself what it's like when you merge a soloist pop star with sort of old-fashioned Broadway theater. And then I remember coincidentally coming across an article about Lindsay Lohan when she did Speed the Plow on the West End in London. And there were just some very interesting stories about her experience of being in this very, dignified show in London. And Lindsay Lohan was in a trickier phase of her life. So that just got me thinking that there was a lot of room for humor there. Small Admissions started as a play, and that was inspired more because I worked in an admissions department in New York City. But also because as my husband and I were interviewing for private schools in New York, I literally could not believe how catastrophically bad the two of us were at interviewing. And I kept wanting to kick him under the table, and I'm sure he felt the same, although he's too nice to say so. But we just couldn't get our messaging straight. We just couldn't seem to tell the right story about the right kid in the right order. And I just thought it was so funny. So I got this image in my head of these parents interviewing, and I thought you could have 2 actors and they could play all the sets of parents. They could play them all. And there would be no interviewer. They would just be sort of speaking out to the audience, and they would be revealing so much about themselves when they're supposed to be talking about their children. And I just thought that would be hilarious. So that's how I started with small admissions. But they were all sort of things that struck me as funny. I mean, that's how I sort of tend to get my ideas, is I just think of some sort of situation. Adult children moving back home is funny. It can also be stressful, but it's really funny to have these adults suddenly under your roof again and having to live by your rules. And I just thought there was so much room for just humor in that as well. So I would say that humor is always what gets me started. Some funny idea.
But you know what's great about, and then Mary has another question about influence, and it's weird. Mary again, who are your influences? That's okay. Anyway, so that you'll be thinking about who your influences are. But and then I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, about the humor. That what I loved about it is I never felt, one of the many things is that I never felt you reached for humor, that you were joke telling. Now, you know, sometimes people do that.
I'm not a comedian.
Sometimes they're men. And I always, if I'm writing something and I feel that it's a little bit of a reach, that I'm trying to be funny, out it goes, because I don't want to do that. So I felt that it was so natural, and it was just the way humor happens in real life. People, your friends aren't comedians on a stage, but there's just this wry view of life. And so Mary, I'm going to get your other question about your influence.
Just to stick to the humor thing for 1 second, one mistake that I think authors make is that they'll have 2 characters talking, and one says something funny and the other character bursts out laughing. And that's the problem, because if the other character bursts out laughing, that's the author saying to you, that was a funny line.
Yes.
And you might find it mildly amusing, or you might find it not especially funny, but all of a sudden you're sort of being told that that doesn't work for me. Like I read something at one point where the character literally was laughing so hard, like she spit her drink out all over the table.
No.
And as much as I think those are hilarious moments in real life, I think it's a problem when you telegraph to your audience, this is a funny moment. Let them decide if it's funny or not. And you know, if you want it to be funny, hopefully they'll find it funny. But I just think that's one place where, because I'm always reading books looking for humor. I love to find books that make me smile, make me laugh. But I find that one place where that's a sort of a mistake that I avoid, because I've seen it a lot when I read. So I always remind myself, don't make one character find another character hilarious, because that's sort of like laughing at your own jokes.
Definitely.
Which doesn't work either.
Right.
So.
Right. Yes. And I want to, let's see. So Mary will you be thinking about, Mary said, for Mary, to everyone, I guess that I'd have to talk about my influences too, but who are your influences?
Well, Elinor Lipman is definitely one of my influences. I've read all of your books, and Stephen Macaulay, who I just
love him. You know him personally?
Oh, he's so funny.
He's just one of my favorite people.
Favorite people in the world. I don't know him super well, but I remember waiting in line at a Barnes & Noble when I was living in Maryland quite a while ago, and getting him to sign my book, and just being super, fangirly over him. I just think he's so wonderful. And then when Limelight came out, I was invited to do an event, and he was on the panel with me. And I just remember thinking, I can't believe this is my life, that I get to be on a panel with this person who I've been admiring, I don't know, 1990 probably. I feel like those were the years like when I really got very particular. I wasn't in college anymore. I was a lit major, and I was getting to choose books on my own. And those were the books I was choosing to read. Terry McMillan, I love what Terry McMillan can do with groups, with families, and with groups of women. and the humor that she can find in situations that are sometimes hilarious and sometimes tragic. But those groups of women, I always liked the way that she got her characters talking, laughing. She's very funny. Oh my gosh, so who else? I like Julie Schumacher. I remember reading her book, Dear Committee Members, and just
one of my thank you. I was trying to remember the title. Me too. Brilliant.
Laugh out loud. Like, I remember people looking at me on the subway like I was a crazy person because I was laughing so hard reading her book. It is absolutely hilarious.
I agree.
And the way she builds that story, like, I just remember reading that and thinking it's all letters, and it's all letters of recommendation, dry, right? Like, how could that possibly be good? But the fact that she uses that device to build this man's entire life story, you know everything about him by the time you finish reading the book. And it's just hilarious.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Simon Rich is very funny. I loved Simon Rich's book, Spoiled Brats. That's a really good one. And then there's a lot of Southern writers that I like because I grew up in the South. I love Kay Gibbons. I think that Ellen Foster was one of my favorite books of all time. Great first person narrative, you know.
You know, when I met Steve McCauley and I had our first novels. Mine was Then She Found Me, and his was The Object of My Affection. And they came out at the same time in Washington Square Press, which became Atria. Did you know that it was Washington?
I did not. I mean, I knew that I didn't know that both of you had. It's amazing.
We did. And I did a reading in Cambridge, Mass, in fact, at the City Hall. And so Steve came because he lived in Cambridge, and our editor said, oh, you should go to a reading. And he sat in the front row. And as you know, there's a lot of stuffed shirts in this business. And and he sat in the front row laughing. And it was just so generous. And luckily, you know, he lives around the corner from, I mentioned, Mamie Medwed. And so I've known him that was in 1990. And that's when you first read him.
Yes, that's when I started reading. And I literally would go I would go to the bookstore. I was living in Cambridge at the time too, although I don't even know if I put it together that he was living in Cambridge. And I don't even know how I first came across his books, except that I just probably heard they were wonderful. But he was, you know, the writer where was that before the internet? Well, you wouldn't sort of look up.
Oh, definitely. 100%. No internet. No email, no internet. Yeah.
So I would just go to the bookstore and look for, you know, Lipman and look for Macaulay and just see, did they maybe put a new book out? Because I just wasn't tapped into that world at all. But I would always check in Kay Gibbons. I would see if she had a new book out. So those were those were the books that I read, because the question is influence, not just the beauty of writing, because Toni Morrison's Beloved is probably the book that I sort of hold up. You know, it's another book that I just, I taught that book for years, so it's very important to me. But the books that I read that I thought, like, I want those to be my friends. I just want to be in that group of writers. That's who I'm trying, you know, that's the stuff that I love to read. And I guess we want to write something that we would love to read. So
I'll just mention one for me, because it happened one day. I was at the library in Newton Highlands, Mass, and I picked up Happy All the Time by Laurie Colwin.
Oh, I just bought that book. Did you tell me to buy that book? Somebody just told me to buy that book, and I have it. It's on my night table.
And I read it, and I read it again, and then I bought it. So I had, you know, bought back the library book, and I bought it. I read it over and over again, and it was what made me then go to the library myself. My parents came in once a week. My son was a baby, came in once a week on Wednesday afternoons or mornings, and I would go to the library and start writing. So because I felt it was smart, so smart, but also very witty. And I wasn't setting out to do that, but I consider and also Fay Weldon, the British,
yes,
the Loves and Lives of She-Devil. So anyway, no, okay.
I love Barbara Pym books also.
Oh, me too.
So funny.
Jumble, like a jumble sale. Okay, we have a new question. Okay, Margie, I came to this Zoom a bit late. Has Amy talked about how the heck she's able to get writing done with everyone living at home? Well, pajamas, where are the rest of them? So your husband goes off to work.
Yeah, so right now, lockdown was really a strange time, but everyone's away at the moment. But I can sort of tune out. I don't know, when I'm like I said, when I'm in that phase where I'm sort of excited about an idea, I can kind of tune things out and, forget that anyone's expecting a meal or anything like that. In Connecticut, it's my porch. I sit on my porch, and that's what it said, right? When and where. The when is just whenever I can, but the where is my porch on Connecticut, in here at the house. That's my happy place, and I just love it there, and that's the main place. In New York, unfortunately, I have a desk, but it's my bed. I'm not good at desk writing. I like my laptop on my lap, so I take that too literally, I think.
I have, let's see, there's something else I wanted to say, a few more things. Excuse me, she's going to put the light on under the corn. Put the light on. It's the green pot. Yeah.
Did you see Betsy Maxwell?
Oh, it's too early, Jonathan. I told him 5 of to put the light on.
Yeah. Betsy Maxwell has a very funny question.
Oh, yes. Oh, Betsy, were you here to hear before about the diet? Go into a little detail, because that is not a big reveal, but I can't, yes.
I just was trying to think of a fad diet that there would be different attitudes toward it, so that there's sort of a family effort to go on. It's not a diet, well, it is, but it's sort of a health kick. It's a lifestyle. I just find it very funny to sort of think
from the book. The name of the book is like medieval. No, what is it called?
I literally to this day cannot remember the name. I had to keep checking in my own manuscript because it's such a stupid name, which I want it to be, but it's like ancient practices, modern life.
Yes, definitely modern life, because somebody misquotes it as modern love at the end. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Yes. So it's this idea of sort of taking our pre-tech ancestors and sort of mimicking their way of life. So we should be more nomadic. So we should walk when we eat. We should not use utensils, because the food should be so right out of the garden that why would you need a fork for that? You can just eat it. And I'm not a big diet person. I'm trying to think of what's the craziest diet.
I didn't want you to sound too serious about this diet, because it's like the outer edges of ridiculous diets, but it would be that your daughter, how old is Isabel? 23,
20, 25, 26.
25, that your daughter would come to you and say, let's try it, Mom.
Yes, and I think crazes are so funny. I mean, I just think the way we all hop on board of these things, whatever it is, whether it's an Instagram thing, we're all going to post this picture now, or if it's, I don't know, I just think crazes are so funny and easy to fall into, and it's a tiny part of the book, but it was really fun, like sort of mulling over what would be kind of the most ridiculous thing. I do remember that I hope my dad's watching. I don't know if my dad's here, but he introduced me, and my mom they did bananas and milk. They would do like 3 days of bananas and skim milk. And that was the entire.
Delicious.
That was all you were allowed to eat for 3 days. So I remember growing up and hearing about my parents suffering on the bananas and milk diet. That's probably the weirdest one I can think of.
I know my late brother-in-law used to eat just 10 oranges a day, spaced out.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a little hard on the stomach after a while, but
I'm sure, but he won't get scurvy, so that's good.
Yeah, that's right. And let's see, how are we doing? I think we're done with questions, but I have some more compliments. Oh, no, this is a legitimate question. So we know about, we heard from Ben, thank you, Ben, graduate school and acting, but when did you say, okay, time to write a novel? Was it because you, sort of small admissions, you were picturing as a play?
I was this was about maybe 10 years ago, or a little more actually, more like 15 years ago. I was living in Berlin with my husband at the American Academy in Berlin. And we were hanging out with these very cool, very creative people. Hilton Als was there.
Oh,
Hal Hartley, the filmmaker, was there. An art historian friend of mine named Ben Binstock. And they were just so smart and so interesting. And I remember thinking one night after 3 martinis that I had this funny thought in my head about my grandparents' life and the fact that they were very sweet and affectionate together. But they built a house that had separate bedrooms. And I don't mean it was like a room and then a guest room. They literally built this house with his room and her room. And that just was so interesting to me. His room was very dark with mahogany furniture and hunt scenes on the wall. And hers was very pink carpet and feminine. And I just remember as I got older thinking that was so interesting because they were very, very affectionate and sweet together. But they had made this, what is that, very like British or something, to have these like. So I wrote a novel that I wrote in a very bingy, Amy-like fashion that was my own story to kind of explain how this could come to be, that a couple could decide to build a house with separate his and her bedrooms. That book was never published. It was, I think, the book that I wrote to sort of learn how to write a book. I might revisit it at some point. I may revisit it sometime, but I think I'm not quite ready. What was the question, Elinor?
it was that about that's you answered it perfectly about so what you were acting and you were teaching and acting and then what made you write?
I went back to teaching high school, and then we moved to New York, and I got this full-time job working in admissions, and I got this idea of these scenes in my head, and I got to do a reading of this play that I wrote. It was faulty, but it was a lot of fun to work on, and I did a reading of it at the Actor Studio in New York, and then my agent read my quirky separate bedrooms book, and she read these quirky scenes and said, I think what you need to do is turn the scenes into a novel. And so that's how I sort of ended up writing my first novel. And I kept working at admissions for about another year. But I think it got a little awkward because I was sort of satirizing the admissions world a little bit. So I think it was time to move on. And yeah, so that's how I ended up sort of coming to this very late in life. So yeah. I thought there was one other thing here. Or are we out of time?
Lucy, is that you see? Did you want us? How are we doing here? It's 5 of 8.
Does anybody else have a question?
There was one question here about have we ever started something and started writing it and then abandoned it, and then maybe have a piece of that resurface in another book?
Yes.
Have you, Elinor?
I have with the original Isabel's Bed. I had this, this woman, and she was named Harriet, which is turned out to be Harriet in Isabel's Bed. But she was going to be sort of like go work at like a cantor's house. Like she took a room in the cantor's house. And she was trying to be a writer, but this was kind of like a position she had. Don't ask me where I got that. And I listened to some cantorial music. And then I reached a point at, I don't know where, but pretty far in, where I said, this is dying. It's like a dead act on a stage. So I kept some of the scenes and put them in this sort of what I call, it's kind of like a cemetery of possible useful ideas. So that one, and the same with the view from Penthouse B, because I'm taking up too much time, but my character was, I forget what she was doing, and then I made her a widow, and I was a new widow, and I thought, well, this has nothing to do with me. She's a whole other character. She's been widowed for a whole year, and on and on. And then, it takes a while to write a book, and I caught up with her, and like I had to, send her out, like sign her up for Match.com and things like that. So, oh, the famous dog.
Tucker just came for a visit.
Oh, that adoring look.
Yeah, He's funny. He's the lap dog under my laptop. I want to just shout out to Patty Parmalee and John Verdon, who are here, and Betsy, and of course Felice is here. This is so nice to see.
How do you know this? How do you know this?
Names. I'm seeing names underneath because I'm on yeah, I don't know. I'm on gallery view, so I'm getting to see some names.
Oh, okay.
So thank you to John and Patty and everybody for
Right.
coming.
I got a Simmons friend, Leslie Dykeman, who wrote about, Simmons.
Yes, so that's how I found out that you went to Simmons, because I was looking on Facebook and I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. So
yes. So anyway, I think we'll just say thank you everyone for coming. Read this wonderful book. I admired it all the way through. It's just not a wasted word yet, it's just funny, and Bridget is just this enormously sympathetic character.
Oh, and I would just say, if you have not read all of Elinor's books, go to your library, whether it's the Kent Library or a different one, and order books, or go to House of Books, which Elinor and I love, and order any books from there, or from your local favorite indie store, wherever you are. But House of Books is fantastic, and libraries are fantastic, and they need our support. So yay.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go see if you put the light on under the corn.
Good idea.
It can only cook for 5 minutes. So anyway,
I think we all want to clap. We would all like to applaud you.
Oh,
We are going to unmute so everyone can applaud.
Thank you, Elinor, so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. My pleasure.
And I just
Thank you both so much.
And I want to thank Elinor and Amy too on behalf of House of Books. We do have signed copies of musical chairs for sale. As I mentioned before, just visit us at houseofbooksct.com/musical chairs.